Everything changed in a matter of seconds. The human body is an absolute marvel of natural engineering. It's built for incredible endurance, flawless balance, and real grace. But let's be honest here, it was never ever designed to endure the unyielding, sheer violence of a modern professional football game. Welcome back to NFL Nexus. I'm your host, and today we are breaking down an explainer that honestly feels far more like a tense Hollywood thriller than a standard football analysis. If you love deep, meticulous dives into the absolute highest stakes of the sport, you've come to the right place. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this explainer, and comment your thoughts down below. And please, if you enjoy what we do, support the channel by becoming a channel member. Okay, today we are looking at the 2026 Indianapolis Colts. And I have to tell you, the tension surrounding this franchise right now is absolutely suffocating. In the National Football League, a team's destiny is usually decided by things like draft capital, intricate salary cap maneuvering, or brilliant schematic advantages. But for the Colts, this upcoming season is entirely dictated by the fragile anatomy of the human frame. We are looking at a master plan that is hanging by a literal microscopic thread. The front office has made their massive financial bets. The coaching staff has built what looks like the perfect offensive and defensive schemes. But the reality out there on the field, it's completely out of their hands right now. It lies entirely in the hands of surgeons, physical therapists, and the cruel, uncontrollable unpredictability of cellular regeneration.
Just let that question hang in the air for a second. What happens when a franchise's future depends entirely on the healing of four joints? Think about the sheer, staggering magnitude of that. We're talking about a multi-billion-dollar operation, an entire NFL franchise, waiting entirely on the microscopic repair of ligaments, tendons, and spinal discs. We aren't just talking about a sprained wrist or a pulled hamstring that requires some ice and a few days of rest on the sidelines. No, we are talking about the core foundation of an entire roster resting squarely on four specific, surgically repaired joints. When you really zoom in on the biomechanics of football, the violence of the sport is undeniable. It's almost terrifying. Every single aggressive cut on the turf, every bone-jarring collision down in the trenches, every desperate twisting reach for the pylon, it puts unimaginable torque on the human skeleton. And for the 2026 Indianapolis Colts, this isn't just some dramatic storyline crafted for training camp cameras. It is a massive, unprecedented medical gamble. The entire ceiling of this team, the livelihoods of the coaching staff, the legacy of the front office, it all comes down to whether or not these four specific players can push their compromised bodies back to the absolute unforgiving peak of human athletic performance.
Head coach Shane Steichen is entering a definitive make or break year. There is absolutely no sugarcoating this reality. The NFL is a machine, it does not wait for anyone, and it certainly does not issue apologies for bad luck or bad timing. The machine just keeps moving forward, ready to crush anyone who can't keep up. So this is the ultimate season of what-ifs. Think about it. What if the quarterback can't plant his foot to drive a deep throw? What if the defensive anchor can't absorb the brute force of a 600-pound double team? What if the newly crowned $100 million wide receiver can't explode off the line of scrimmage with his trademark speed? The Colts are banking on numerous high-profile starters to miraculously return to form, but you have to understand, these aren't just rotational guys filling out the bottom of a roster. These are the structural pillars of the organization. These are the players largely responsible for the overall success on the respective sides of the ball. The front office has pushed all their chips to the absolute center of the table. They've intensely studied the medical charts, they've had those endless late-night consultations with top orthopedic surgeons, and they've decided to double down on the risk. If this actually works, it's going to be a masterclass in risk management and roster construction. But if it fails, the organizational fallout will be nothing short of catastrophic.
Okay, let's dive into this, starting with the most critical, highly scrutinized position in all of global sports, the quarterback. Daniel Jones. Let's rewind to Week 14 of the 2025 season. The Colts are rolling. The offense is clicking in ways literally no one predicted, operating with a rhythm that has defensive coordinators completely scrambling for answers. And then a pop. A devastating, silent, season-derailing torn Achilles. Just like that, the most surprising and exhilarating season of Jones's career was over in a flash of agonizing pain. The silence that fell over the stadium that day wasn't just about losing a crucial regular season game. It was the chilling realization that the entire trajectory of the franchise had just been violently altered. The Achilles tendon is the thickest and strongest tendon in the human body. It is the absolutely crucial mechanism for transferring kinetic power from the calf muscle down to the heel and foot. For a quarterback who relies on driving the football with lower body torque and escaping the collapsing pocket with sudden burst, it is literally everything. When that tendon snaps, the foot essentially goes dead.
The long, grueling process of reattaching it, immobilizing the leg, fighting off severe muscle atrophy, and eventually learning to psychologically trust that repaired tissue again, it is a complete physical and mental nightmare. To really grasp what was lost, you have to look at the sheer level of production the Colts were getting before tragedy struck. It was staggering. Just look at these numbers on your screen. 3,101 passing yards, 19 passing touchdowns, a career-high 68% completion rate, and a phenomenal 100.2 passer rating in just 13 starts. Under the brilliant guidance of head coach Shane Steichen, passing game coordinator Alex Tanney, and quarterbacks coach Cam Turner, Jones had fundamentally transformed his mechanics and his processing. The Colts were the 9th best offense in dropback EPA per play. They were top 10 in dropback success rate and air yards per attempt. He wasn't just checking down and managing games safely, he was actively pushing the ball aggressively downfield and dominating opposing secondaries. And we absolutely cannot forget the lethal threat of his legs. 164 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground. His mobility is his true superpower. It fundamentally changes the math for the defense on every single snap. But the grim reality on the right side of your screen is a Week 14 torn Achilles. Reclaiming that explosive mobility post-injury is the single biggest key to his 2026 season. Now he's reportedly cleared to do everything for training camp, heavily participating in 7-on-7 drills during Liddy camp. But let's be real, playing in shorts and a red non-contact jersey is a completely different universe than staring down a 260-pound edge rusher screaming off the blind side, forcing you to step up, plant hard, and fire in a fraction of a second. And that brings us to the ultimate, terrifying consequence of this situation: $88 million. This isn't just an inspiring medical recovery story we're tracking. This is a massive, visceral financial leap of faith. Despite tearing his Achilles late in the year, throwing his entire athletic future into massive doubt, the Colts front office handed Daniel Jones a massive 2-year, $88 million extension this offseason. Just process the gravity of that for a second. You are handing the keys to your entire franchise and an immense portion of your strictly regulated salary cap to a player whose defining physical attribute relies entirely on a tendon that was just surgically sewn back together. It is a terrifying gamble that will define this era of Colts football. If Jones comes back and replicates those brilliant 2025 metrics, that contract is an absolute bargain in today's exploding quarterback market. But if that Achilles scar tissue saps even 10% of his initial burst, if he hesitates for just a microscopic fraction of a second when the pocket inevitably collapses around him, that $88 million becomes a suffocating anchor. It will drag this entire front office and coaching regime straight to the bottom of the league.
Now let's shift our focus to the other side of the ball, down into the brutal, unforgiving trenches. Because a fragile offense is a serious liability for sure, but a defense operating without its beating heart, that is a complete disaster. Enter DeForest Buckner. Since he arrived via trade ahead of the 2020 season, Buckner has been an absolute, undeniable force up front. He is the immovable object and the unstoppable force rolled into one massive, terrifying frame. He literally dictates the geometry of the field. When he is in the game, the Colts' defense functions exactly as intended. He commands mandatory double teams, he collapses pockets from the interior, he swallows up the run game before it even crosses the line of scrimmage. But when he is off the field, the drop-off is startling. It's almost embarrassing. You immediately see just how irreplaceable he is at the point of attack, because opposing offensive lines suddenly have totally free rein to climb to the second level and completely wreck the game plan.
But the trenches of the NFL are a brutal, unforgiving place. It's a place where two 320-pound men collide at immense speeds over 60 times a game. And in 2025, Buckner suffered a terrifying injury. Contemplations of retirement. Those specific words should send a deep chill down the spine of every single Colts fan. We aren't talking about a pulled muscle here. We aren't talking about a dislocated finger that gets taped up on the sideline. We are talking about the cervical spine, the neck, the very conduit that connects the brain to the rest of the body. When a seasoned warrior like DeForest Buckner, a man who has made a highly lucrative living in the most violent real estate on a football field, has to legitimately pause and consider walking away from the game forever just to preserve his basic quality of life, you know the situation is incredibly severe. Now, he has officially confirmed he will return for this upcoming season, but that dark shadow, that lingering fear of one wrong collision, one awkward bend of the neck in the pile, it hangs heavily over every single snap he will take. 12. That is the number of regular season games DeForest Buckner has missed over the past 2 deeply frustrating seasons. Between a debilitating high ankle sprain in 2024 and the terrifying combination of a herniated disc and that neck injury in 2025, his once invincible body is sounding a deafening alarm.
And I need you to understand the mechanics of that herniated disc, because it is particularly devastating for a defensive tackle. When a spinal disc bulges out and compresses against a nerve root, it absolutely obliterates the explosive upward leverage a lineman desperately needs to anchor his lower half against a 600-pound double team. The pain radiates down the extremities, completely sapping his raw strength. And the timing of all this? It couldn't possibly be more dramatic. Buckner is entering a pivotal, career-defining contract year in 2026. This isn't just about getting back on the field to help the team win games. This is about reclaiming his elite all-pro status to secure his financial future, while simultaneously holding the entire Colts defense together through sheer force of will. The pressure on him to perform flawlessly right out of the gate at training camp is immense, because the overall success of this team completely hinges on his ability to single-handedly dominate the line of scrimmage without his body breaking down again.
All right, now we move to the perimeter, the offensive weapons. This is the part of the field where raw speed, sharp deceleration, and explosive leaping ability are the only physical currencies that truly matter. Alec Pierce is entering a brand new era of expectations. After a spectacular breakout 2025 campaign where he fiercely battled through intense, localized pain to produce at an incredibly high level, the Colts decided to officially crown him. He is now their definitive WR1. But securing your financial future in the NFL often comes with a hidden physical toll that the television cameras just don't catch on game day. Pierce was dealing with severe, chronic soreness down the final stretch of that breakout year, relying on heavy taping and round-the-clock treatment just to get on the field. He was playing through a diagnosed structural issue in his ankle that orthopedic doctors deemed absolutely unavoidable.
$114 million. To kick off free agency in early March, the Colts locked Alec Pierce into a historic 4-year deal. They completely secured him as their franchise cornerstone for the foreseeable future. And the crucial point here is the massive financial structure of this thing. $60 million of that contract is fully guaranteed. But here's where the plot thickens. Just weeks later, toward the end of March, Pierce underwent ankle surgery. Now, it was categorized to the press as a routine cleanup procedure, removing loose cartilage or painful bone spurs from a joint. But remember, this is a joint that relies entirely on extreme flexion and extension. It was a surgery doctors told him he would inevitably need either this offseason or in 2027. He and his medical camp made the strategic, long-term decision to handle it right now so the joint wouldn't deteriorate further. But in the short term, the timing injects a massive dose of anxiety straight into the building. You just guaranteed a receiver $60 million, and his very first act under the new mega contract is going under the knife and entering a walking boot?
And this brilliantly illustrates the agonizing race against the clock. It becomes intensely clear when you trace the exact dates of this process. Look at this timeline. He signs the historic contract in early March. He goes in for the ankle surgery in late March. The strict medical timeline dictates a non-negotiable 4 to 6 month recovery and rehabilitation window before he can safely explode off the line of scrimmage again. Now trace that timeline to when training camp opens, July 29th. That specific recovery window crashes directly into the most critical, foundational part of the preseason. The Colts are actively transitioning into a brand new era, with Pierce as the undisputed top option. But he might miss a significant portion of training camp, and perhaps the preseason games entirely. So ask yourself, how do you build essential split-second timing with a quarterback who is also returning from a torn Achilles when your star receiver is sidelined rehabbing a surgically repaired ankle? The margins for error here are virtually non-existent. They are essentially flying blind into the month of September.
Finally, we look at the secondary. This is a profound heartbreak story that perfectly encapsulates the absolute unfiltered cruelty of this violent sport. Justin Walley, selected 99th overall in the 3rd round of the 2025 NFL Draft, a pick that was heavily scrutinized by draft analysts for its positional value. But Walley took that intense external criticism, used it as deeply personal fuel, and immediately proved the doubters spectacularly wrong in his very first training camp. I mean, he was electric. He was incredibly sticky in coverage. He was destined for a massive, game-changing role as a rookie defensive back. And then, before the regular season even arrived, snap. A devastating, non-contact torn ACL. A simple plant of the foot, a sudden shift in weight, the sickening shift of the tibia, and it was over. All that hype, all that incredible momentum, entirely extinguished in a fraction of a second on the practice field.
Now, Walley isn't just trying to make the active roster this year. He is aggressively projected to be the starting slot cornerback. He's slated to be the very first full-time starter there not named Kenny Moore II in the entire Chris Ballard era. And you have to understand what this means, because this specific role is one of the most mechanically demanding, joint-punishing jobs on a football field. It requires intense, sudden, constant twisting, turning, backpedaling, flipping of the hips, and violently driving downhill in the absolute chaos of the middle of the field. Every single sharp movement, every sudden deceleration places extreme rotational stress and shear force directly on that newly grafted knee ligament. Yes, modern medicine and elite rehab have made ACL recoveries highly successful compared to 20 years ago, that's for sure. But betting on a player who has never played a single regular season snap to return from major invasive knee reconstruction and immediately lock down the slot against the fastest athletes in the world, that is a monumental, incredibly risky leap of faith by this defensive coaching staff. So when you finally zoom out and look at the entirety of this roster construction, the true towering scale of the risk comes into razor-sharp focus. The 2026 season for the Indianapolis Colts is a massive, incredibly delicate, interconnected puzzle of physical rehabilitation. Shane Steichen's offensive and defensive master plan requires all of these volatile pieces to fall into place simultaneously. It's a domino effect. If the defensive line can't get pressure because Buckner's neck flares up, the young slot corner coming off an ACL is brutally exposed in coverage. If the quarterback can't move because his Achilles is stiff, the star wide receiver's ankle rehab means nothing because the deep ball timing is completely thrown off. If one piece fails, the whole structure shudders. If two fail, it collapses entirely into ruin. This isn't just about hoping a few players get healthy so they can play football. This is about front office job security. This is about coaching legacies. This is about defining a highly elusive championship window in a league that shows absolutely no mercy. So the absolute crucial point we are looking at is this ticking clock of impending, unavoidable pressure. Every single one of these medical milestones must be met perfectly, without a single setback. Daniel Jones must somehow regain his elite explosive mobility on that surgically repaired Achilles tendon to justify an $88 million anchor on the salary cap. DeForest Buckner's cervical spine and herniated disc must endure the car crash-level violence of the interior trenches so he can anchor the defense in the most important contract year of his life. Alec Pierce's freshly cleaned-out ankle must fully heal on schedule, allowing him to explode out of his brakes and justify $114 million without the distinct benefit of a full, grueling training camp to get into football shape. And Justin Wally must mentally and physically trust his reconstructed ACL while navigating the most demanding, twist-heavy, chaotic position in the defensive secondary. 4 critical joints, 4 massive contracts, and sky-high expectations, 4 ticking clocks leading all the way up to Week 1. It is a terrifying, mesmerizing reality for this story franchise. The 2026 Indianapolis Colts absolutely have the elite talent, the brilliant coaching, and the raw ambition to shock the football world. But before they can even think about battling the rest of the league on Sundays, they have to win a grueling, agonizing war against their own anatomy. Because as this franchise knows all too well, in the NFL, a championship window can close in the time it takes a single ligament to snap. So what do you think? Are the Colts making a brilliant, calculated gamble, or are they walking right into a medical disaster? Thank you for diving into this absolute thriller of a situation with me. Remember, your home for this kind of deep dive is NFL Nexus. Subscribe to the channel, like this explainer, comment your thoughts down below, and please support the channel by becoming a member. We'll see you on the next one.